Greetings. Oh my goodness. I'm just waking up. Greetings and welcome to Chant a Psalm a day. Today's Psalm is 55 and okay. Today's Psalm is 55 and it is a powerful Psalm. For those of you out there who have burdens, we all have burdens. I am especially sending this out to my my loved ones who are in the hospital, who are, you know, in physical stress, who are in intellectual stress, emotional stress, social stress. These I call the pies. And for this psalm, we're looking at supporting these areas of our lives with this translated word, with the word that is in the scriptures, the word that is in the words of a creator of the universe, the one that is all seeing and knowing, and the one that will bring about everything that is given will be returned. So let's look at this psalm here. And I am really behind in certain things in my classes. I have to do a video summary. So I'm going to do that after my psalm. And I was supposed to do yesterday. So I am behind on that. And I like to be up on all my assignments because they are assignments from the Most High. And I take them seriously. And any organization that has me working with them in any way, because I do have my own organization, my own business. But when I lend myself out, to hire for experience for myself as well as, to help that organization, I do it at 100%. And it, it shows in my works. I'm not going to speak about the different listing of things, but it shows in there. Okay, so let's get the psalm going. I am exhausted. I've been, traveling and didn't get to rest because I had a presentation to do for a colleague's class on food, culture, and clothing. It's fashion design class, I believe, and their topic was exposing to different cultures. And I shared the culture of the Virgin Islands. I started off with Pressure Bus Pipe. I want to shout out to Pressure Bus Pipe for his song, So Nice. It opened my dissertation proposal, and it also opened my presentation yesterday. So bless up, give thanks, Pressure Bus Pipe. So this psalm is to the choir master with stringed instruments. It's a maskil of David. So it is a psalm of David, and it's called, it's a maskil. And it's interesting that because maskaram, it's similar to that. When I hear that, it's, the beginning of the Ethiopian New Year. And that is sounding similar to maskil of David. And we know that Ethiopia, that is, that's why I wanted to turn the camera so you can, the flag and is there. Oh, pardon me for, I'm drinking some hot tea. I've been traveling, and I'm gonna eat some aloe to get whatever is in my chest. And I think it's probably cheese, is the quesadilla that I had. And that was the last quesadilla cheese that I'm gonna have, because cheese harbors a lot of mucus. Mucus turns into fat cells. People didn't know that, but it does. So I'm trying to get, good fat and not the bad fat that causes, a breakdown in the body. I don't want that. So now Psalm 55 verse 1. Listen to I when I talk to the Most High. So verse 1, it's speaking of give ear to my prayer, O God. So in that ancient time, they spoke in that way. And that's why it's hard for us to read the Bible, because we don't speak in that way. So in this translation of the Psalm, I translated in the language of truth and right. And I always ask that the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart is acceptable in the sight of righteousness, the Most High, the goodness, the mercy, the love, all of that is of the Most High, that's embodied in that Creator. And, that is what the psalm is why the reason it is translated, because it is in this give ear to my prayer. It's in that Shakespearean kind of sonnets. And so we look at this as listening. Listen. And prayer is talking to God, talking to the Most High, using words, opening mouths and speaking, to the Most High. And I always intercede on others' behalves about, when I speak to the Most High. I am speaking to the Most High on I behalf, meaning that ones who are in the hospital, ones who are suffering from mental illness, ones who are, in prison, ones who are incarcerated in prison, ones who are in despair and depression, ones who are in places that are not growing ones, but keeping ones down. This psalm is for those ones, and especially those ones that are suffering from political wars, genocide, and just basically war. There's war going on around us. We don't realize it because we're in our safe space. I'm glad and give thanks, the soldiers are not busting down this door, coming in, speaking about whatever. So I'm giving thanks that that's not the case for I and I. However, all of I and I, that's not the case. So then it impacts I, because there are individuals out there who are waking up without anything to eat, waking up with nowhere to clean themselves, clean their bodies, clean their minds, clean their hearts. There's nothing around them to do that, and they're suffering. And this psalm goes out to them, to those. So it starts off with a request. It's a request to the Most High of David, speaking of, listen, God, listen to when I talk. I come to God in my words, in opening my mouth. I come to the Most High, opening my mouth, speaking words. That's why you see my dog doesn't have words. This is the sounds. I and I have words. I and I have words. And speaking words to the Most High is for some a daily thing, is for some they don't speak to the Most High. They don't, talk to, because they feel they're just, you're talking to something that's not there, because they're looking at the outside instead of talking from in the inside of themselves, and looking deep within. And in that, in looking deep within, you are able to have a one-on-one with yourself, speaking to this higher power, this higher source that is written in the scriptures and in the psalm. And Psalm 55, cast burdens on on Jehovah, on, whatever that one is that you call. That's your personal business. It's your personal relationship. It's nobody should be judging you. Oh, you calling that? Oh, you call. They should say, oh, why are you destroying yourself with drugs and alcohol and this and that? Not about the name you're calling. What are you doing in your life that's representative of that name? That is important. And no one is perfect. However, that importance of going within and finding that power, even though you may not really believe that there is a Almighty in the universe, of the universe, and that's, you may not believe that. Start from looking within and you will be revealed that. But looking on the outside is not going to help. It's not going to get you to see it, because the Most High is in this world, but is not of this world in terms of where the world is gone and how it's going today. It's evil, wicked, it's just nefarious. And it's a world where it's based on self, and people get sucked into that. They get sucked into that self and self-satisfying themselves with spending money, with going out there and not having priorities, but just about self, and their self is never satisfied. It's never satisfied because they're going to look for something on the outside to satisfy it. And I know from experience with my first child that I went out there and that's what I wanted, something from the outside to, but that was something that was from the outside look I was looking for, that ended up growing inside me, that changed my entire view. Having a growing life inside of you, growing, just gives you a different perspective on life. So, and for those out there who are pregnant, so this psalm is for you too. I've been seeing a lot of pregnant females, and I always, bless, you're carrying the future. And they're like, what? And I said, yes, I have to honor that. And in honoring that, I'm honoring the creator that made that to be. And that is powerful in itself. So we look at the Psalm 55, starting off with giving a listen to the words that you speak to God. And David is specifically, speaking this because in the next part of verse 1, Psalm 55, David is making a statement. And then it's a plea. It's hide not God's self from I plea for mercy. So, and hide not yourself from my plea for mercy, exclamation mark. And I don't use pronouns. I'm going to take that out. Hide not God's self from a plea for mercy on the people that are suffering around the world because of political wars that they have nothing to do with. They're basically collateral damage. And because it's not happening to ones in the US of A, doesn't mean it cannot. And it's slowly creeping to that point. So what do we have but the mercy of the Almighty Creator, the mercy of Jah, the mercy of, Rastafari, head creator, the mercy of King and Queen, that ruling fortress of love and kindness and mercy and goodness and honor and integrity and truth and right and standing firm in love. And that's where you lead from. And that's where you're going to go. And trusting in, this is the big thing here, trusting in nothing else but the Most High. And not being afraid of what ones can do to hurt you. Because people plotting, they got your picture, they got pieces of your hair, they doing all kind of stuff. And these things are, getting to ones because ones have not built up that armor solid enough where they can be protected by themselves, their own righteousness, and their own kindness and mercy, because they are seeking that has the ultimate kindness and mercy. Okay? And that is what they are, because that's what they seek. What is that? What's inside? And seeking for what's inside, being honest with yourself, having authenticity about yourself, and being honest to know that what's in your heart you're expressing in your actions and in your words, and not contrary to that, like you're hiding what's really in your heart and speaking something different. You're going to be confused. There's going to be confusion in that. And I've seen it with many folks who don't want to live their authentic life because of public scrutiny. Like the public has their salvation. And knowing that your salvation is a gift and it's given by the sacrifice of a one that, came and made that statement, you have to now go and sin and no more, and go and be that light and that love and that honor and integrity. So verse 1 is, I've spent 20 minutes just on verse 1. So I have to move it along because it's 7 a.m. now, and this psalm is about 23 verses. So we're going to dive into it quickly now as we go. But I wanted to set it up because verse 1 really sets it off. And it sets it off with an exclamation mark, and it sets it off with a request. David has a request to the Most High, don't hide, from this plea for mercy. And that is my plea. That is I plea as well, for mercy, not just for I self, but for all of I. So attend to I and answer I restless in I and I moan. That's verse 2. Verse 3, because, okay, why is this happening to me? Because of the noise of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For the wicked drop trouble upon I, and in anger the wicked bear a grudge against I, period. So verse 1, 2, and 3, that's the foundation of Psalm 55. Cast burdens on the Most High. And I'm casting my burdens is children and families who are suffering because of war and because of developmental delays, and families don't know what to do. So the Love City Child and Family Center that I'm building is going to be a space where early childhood can be looked at, and identifying developmental delays early on. When you come to the Love City Child and Family Center, you're going to know it's not just going to be a drop-off babysitting daycare thing. And that's fine, we have those. But those can also bring their children to the Love City Child and Family Center for applied behavior analysis, speech pathology, occupational therapy for early childhood, young babies, intellectual, all the areas of the pies, and even emotional support, emotional, therapy, child psychologist, child therapists. These folks are trained, and they're going to be at the Love City Child and Family Center. And I have to now add all of these folks because, I want them to be able to have a salary. The nonprofit is going to pay them. You come in certain times, during the day, and every day at certain times you're on site. You have appointments. The infant, the toddler, and the preschool room are going to be running, and that's going to happen. That's going to be ongoing. However, we're going to have these offices around the classrooms, and around the classrooms, is the child psychologist, the social worker, the behavior analyst, the speech pathologist, the language and development person, the physical therapist, the emotional, therapist. All of these offices are going to be around this um, space where these offices can see into these classrooms. So the child psychologist will have a window and looking at what's going on in the classroom. The behavior and analyst will be looking too. Only when they have an appointment with a child or a family, then they will can close the window of that observation of looking out into the classroom, because the classrooms can't see out, only those watching in for observation research purposes. So that access is important to have these trained individuals working in tandem with the classrooms, the infant room, the toddler room, the preschool room. So we know what is going on, and we have trained individuals watching to tell us what is going on, and what that information that they derive, we can then take it to build curriculums and design lesson plans. Okay. And so I'm speaking of all of that in terms of this burden, the burden of things that are going on in I life, my life, that I share when I chant the Psalm a day. And this is the burden, building a Love City Child and Family Center to identify developmental delays in early childhood. Drop the mic, period. And there is no place in the territory that does that. They may have, folks that come in who, are a speech pathologist or whatever, or a social worker, one for the two islands, that type of thing. That's not going to happen with the Love City Child and Family Center. We're going to have people that have a place to stay and work at this center. You can live and work there. And yes, you live and work there. Part of what you're getting paid, you'll see in your pay stub, housing, if you have a food allowance, you have certain monies that you could spend that's going to just come out of your, paycheck. And you see it when you turn in the receipts, you get it, that way. So these are words of David pleading, pleading for mercy. And it's going to keep on going, because this plea for mercy, in the Psalm, we find out why David is pleading for mercy. In verse 3, it tells us, because of the noise of the enemy. Okay? Because of the oppression of the wicked. For the wicked drop trouble upon I, and in anger, the wicked bear a grudge against I. So we look at that as something important to really tell us why David is restless, complaining, and moaning. This is some actions here in verse 2. David is, speaking of his state of, physical, mental, and all that. And it's restless. He, in his complaint, and he's moaning. And he tells us why. Because of the enemy. And it describes the enemy: oppressive, Okay, trouble and grudge and anger against you. So we go on to verse 4, and verse 4 to 8 is a one chunk, and this is, I'm going to read it through. I and I heart is in anguish within I and I. The terrors of death have fallen upon I and I. Fear and trembling come upon I, and horror overwhelms I. And I speak, oh, that I had wings as a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. Yes, I would wander far away. I would lodge in the wilderness, Selah, and I would hurry to find a shelter from the raging wind and tempest. End quote. Powerful. Powerful. Shh. Come here. Stop all of that. Stop it. Stop all the barking. It's okay. Yes, I know you get into the psalm too. So this verse 4 to 8 is powerful because David is having anguish and is in his heart. We have heart disease in the US, and heart disease, comes from the stress, and it comes from, all of this restless and moaning and complaining. So as a result of all that, your heart is in this anguish within, yourself. And the reason is because the terrors of death have fallen upon, has fallen upon. And that's coming from political wars. We have children dying. I am dealing with the terrors of death with my son, being found in a motel in California, and me finding out months later that's what he was found. So this terror of death is serious. I know what that is, and that's why I'm this burden of family that's in the hospital. I'm asking that they are guided and protected, and they are blessed, and that their burdens may be removed, and they may no longer have them. So verse 4 to 8 is powerful. It's even a Selah in there, because David is talking about having, wings as a dove to be able to fly away and be at rest, and wandering, far away and lodging in a place that's wilderness. And then this is the word Selah. And hurrying to find a shelter from this raging wind and tempest. So we had this wind that was happening. Come here. This wind that was happening. And it was a lot of wind. So that's verse 4 to 8. Verse 9 and 10 now, this is Psalm 55. David is speaking of what needs to be done to the wicked who are being oppressive, the wicked bearing this grudge against, folks, dropping trouble on folks. David is, in verse 9, starts off with destroy and puts the Lord in there. Destroy, O Lord. And David is not speaking of himself destroying. He's, speaking of the Most High being the one destroying, dividing up the enemy's tongues. Like, their words are divisive. They're dividing, And words of division is putting one person against another. Oh, you might ride or die, and the other person is standing there like, okay, what am I? That you're dividing, and that's messy, and it causes animosity and division and confusion. It's just like a parent telling its two children, and the parent telling one, "You my favorite one. You my boy. I love you and me is that like wait," and the other child standing there like, "Okay, what am I?" And that devalues that other child. The person doing that may not know it or intend to do that, but that is what is happening. And we cannot have favoritism. We have nepotism on the job all the time, and that's not right either. So this favoritism of, having one person over a next person is divisive. And that's what verse 9 is speaking of, destroying those dividing tongues. Destroy, O Lord, divide their tongues. For I see violence and strife in the city. Okay. Verse 10, day and night they go around the city and on city walls. And inequity and trouble are within these city walls. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression, now this is verse 11. Oppression and fraud do not depart from the city walls marketplace. So unpacking this, I have class at 9 and I have to walk up there. So I got to get moving quickly. Verse 9 and 10 is powerful. So it is talking about a place where there's violence. And I talked about this just about the psalm being for those who are suffering from political war. That's violence. Bombing people's, spaces, dropping bombs. Mussolini did that to Ethiopia. He dropped bombs on Ethiopia. The United States did it to different cities. They dropped a bomb, I think, in Philadelphia on the Africa movement. So this bomb dropping, warmongering behavior has got to go. It's I don't like it. And David doesn't like it because he's got anguish inside of him because of the terrors of death around that's going on, because as a result of this division of tongues, dividing tongues, destroy these dividing tongues, because these dividing tongues are causing these wars and strife in the city. And I just spoke about this yesterday, that the language of divide and conquer is a language of oppression. It's a language of colonialism and capitalism. It's a language of white supremacy. That's what that language is, divide and conquer. And some folks are under the influence of that and don't even realize it, that they're dividing and conquering folks. So I have students in my class that I teach. I'm not going to divide them up to conquer them all. I'm going to bring them all together and love on them, you see, and not divide them up and conquer them all. No, we're going to all come together. We're going to work together. I got you. This is the assignment that you've been given. You're going to go out there. You're going to do that assignment. And I'm here. I got your back. That's what it's about, not dividing and conquering. So David is speaking about destroying those those certain systems. Destroy that. And why? Because it's gonna reap violence and strife in the city. Verse 9, for I see violence and strife in the city. That's gonna be the result of that. And day and night they go around it on its walls, and inequity and trouble are all inside the city. They got ruin in its midst, and oppression and fraud is up in there as they go about their marketplace from its marketplace. Okay, it's speaking of that oppression and fraud do not depart from these places. They stay there because it's oppressive and it's fraudulent. So verse 12, 13, 14, and 15, now we look at, for it is not an enemy who taunts I and I. Then I could bear it. You could bear it. That's the enemy out there. It is not an adversary who deals insolently with I and I. Then I could, hide from the adversary. Verse 13. However, the enemy, because it's talking about in verse 12, for it is not an enemy who taunts me, okay? It is my equal in verse 13. It is someone that is my equal. If I'm a woman, it's a woman. If I'm a man, it's a man. It speaks of, but it is you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. Now, this is not an adversary that's dealing insolently with David. It is David's equal, David's companion, his familiar friend. Just as we see what happened with Jesus when Jesus had this betrayal, right? So verse 14, David gets specific about this equal, this companion, this familiar friend, how they used to take sweet counsel together. They used to, have sweet fellowship together. Within God's house, we walked in the throng. So they used to be in the Most High's house. They used to probably go to church together and everything. Right? And David in verse 15 gets real radical. Real radical. In verse 15, David speaks to let death steal over the adversary. Or this one who is, not an enemy that taunts you, but it's a one that is your equal, your companion. So it's probably this, a person who is, you have domestic violence. You have people close to you that hurt you, that can hurt you. The same ones who you go to sweet counsel together within the house of the Most High, walking in the throng, the same ones could be the ones that, is doing this. Okay? Because in verse 12 to 15, it's, This, from verse 9 to 10, this inequity and trouble and oppression and fraud is coming from your equal, is coming from your companion, is coming from your familiar friend. And in verse 15, I can't even speak it because it's so harsh. Verse 15, let death steal over them. Let death steal over them. And who is them? The ones who are perpetuating this oppression and fraud and inequity and trouble and violence and strife. And it's a person that's your equal, your companion, your familiar friend is doing this. This is harsh. And for David to speak of these words, let this one who is doing all that go down to Sheol alive. Like, you're going to be in hell, and you're going to know you in hell. For evil is in these ones' dwelling place and in these ones' hearts. So this is why you have to be careful who you are in companionship, who is your equal, may not always be, or a familiar friend may not always be upright to you, or good and loving and merciful and to you, because evil dwells in their space. Evil is in their dwelling place. And evil is violence. When you have violent video games in your homes, that is evil. You are bringing in that evil into your home. And when you succumb to children's wants, not even their needs, but their wants, these are extras, you become an enabler to evil. You are enabling evil to come in. And evil is, according to verse 15, dwells in places. So take out the violent video games, take out the anything that perpetuates violence or anger or evil. Like evil movies, don't watch those, or limit the movies that you watch. All these demonic, evil movies you're inviting into your space. And some religions don't allow you to watch that stuff because that's part of your life. Your life is about building a relationship with the Almighty that lives within. And in that building relationship, you have to put things in it that's going to make it stronger, because we're living in a time that is not going to be nice, as David is going through what he's going through here, because he's seeing, violence and strife in the city. And the violence go on day and night around the city walls. And, there's inequity and trouble. This is what happens with war. Inequity and trouble are within these places, and ruin is in the midst, meaning that they're going to the bombs and all of the stuff that is destroying the cities are going to be left in ruins. And and it's because oppression and fraud don't depart from there. There's a lot of fraudulent things going on in these places. So, and who suffers is is ones who are children and families. That's who suffers, who the most vulnerable populations are. And the children and families, are inclusive of the elders. So we have, generations that are suffering. So in verse 15, David is making a request to let this happen to these ones that are wicked. And, especially because it's from a companion, it's from, someone that when it's talk about a familiar friend, someone that is got this evil in their dwelling place and in their heart. Their heart is not for God because their heart is not for the other person. When you are selfish and are just about yourself, you are not about God, because God is not about himself. God gave his only son. The Almighty gave that to as a sacrifice. So we have to do that. We have to sacrifice for others. And when we just use others and don't sacrifice for others, especially those who are sacrificing for you, that's what a familiar friend is. That's who a familiar friend, a companion, that's somebody who's your partner, who's your, equal, who's your, ride or die, they call them, that familiar, companion. I don't speak die, I say ride or live. And so we look at the verse 15 as powerful. Then in verse 16, 17, 18, and 19, that whole chunk there is talking about what David is going to do. Okay. He's, ending in verse 15 with what he's asking the Most High to do. And why? My tea is cold now. In verse 16, I call to the Most High, and the Most High will save I. Verse 17, evening and morning, or night and arise, night and light, and at noon I utter complaint and moan, and the Most High listens to I voice. The Most High redeems I life in safety from the battle that I wage, for many are arrayed against I. Verse 19, the Most High will listen and humble ones. The Most High is enthroned from of anciency, Selah, from of ancient times, because they do not change and do not fear God. Okay? So, those who are arrayed against I, and the word arrayed is displaying things in a particular way, arranging things. So those who are, against I, against I have that do that because they don't change. They are stagnant. They are stuck like Chuck. They still do the same mistakes over and over and over again. They don't change because they don't fear God. The same thing I just mentioned, that God is not within them because they are more about themselves and not about the other person, like going out of their way for that other person. And when you go out of your way for that other person and put your own needs aside, you're sacrificing something for yourself for someone else. And when others don't do that for you, it becomes this, you are complaining and moaning. But the Most High is going to listen to that voice, and the Most High is going to redeem I and I life in safety from the battle that is waged, because many are arrayed against, I and I, because the Most High saves I and gives I and I bless upon bless upon bless. So the Most High redeeming I and I life in safety from the battle that is waged, because many are arrayed against I, and the Most High will listen and humble those who are coming against I. He's going to humble them. They're going to come, they're going to apologize to you. And because the Most High is the one that is enthroned from of ancient, from of such time ago, Selah. That is what we seek. We seek that ancient, that time when, we didn't depend on the trappings of the world to survive. We survived without that. And we didn't change. What changed was our growth and our relationship with our God. Because people who are, arrayed against you, they don't change. They keep making the same mistakes over and over and over because they don't fear God. According to Psalm 55, verse 19, I'm going to go with that. That they do not change. So doing something to help, you're helping, you're giving them a strength, even though they don't give you that, you still should have love in your heart. Now we're going into an hour here. Verse 20, we have 4 more verses in this psalm. I and I companion stretched out a hand against friends, violated an agreement. I and I companions' words were smooth as butter, yet war was in the companion's heart. The companion's words were softer than oil, yet the companion's words were drawn swords. So in verse 20 to 21, David is talking about the same companion, the same equal person, your friend, your familiar friend, who stretched out a hand against others and violated, agreements. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to help you do this. And then they don't. They help themselves do something else. They violated an agreement. So in verse 21, it speaks of how they violated that agreement by speaking by speaking smooth words, softer than oil, smooth as butter, yet this is in their heart, and their words were drawn swords. So in verse 22, cast burdens on the Most High, and the Most High will sustain you. The Most High will never permit the righteous to be moved, right? When I weep for folks who do me, wrong, my companion and friends, my close, person, and I don't want them to suffer. I speak mercy on their behalf. Those in the hospital, those any place, because this is serious. What verse 15 talks about, that death is going to steal over them, and they're going to go down to these places alive. They're going to be there because they have these evil in their dwelling places and in their hearts. And that's what these violent video games does. It creates this person to be a certain way, sneaky, and they're hiding behind certain things, and shooting at their friends, or not their friends, but who they think is their enemies, that they create in these video games, violent video games. So the righteous is not going to be moved. The righteous is going to be okay, because you're casting your burden on the Most High, and the Most High is going to sustain you and will never permit the righteous to be moved. Not at all. Okay? The righteous will not be moved. Verse 23, David ends with, the Most High will cast ones down that, are being evil. Will cast ones down. And being evil is, when you're selfish, it's just about yourself. Remember, you're serving a Jesus, a God, a Most High that was not selfish, that gave something of himself to show you that you too need to give that. You too need to give that up. Give up yourself for someone else. And when folks don't do that, it becomes evil. They become self-gratifying, and it's very immature, and it turns priorities sideways. So in verse 23, the Most High is going to cast these ones down into the pit of destruction. And who are these ones? They're human beings of blood. They have their flesh and blood. They men of blood and treachery. So they're coming after your blood. They're vampires. They're treacherous. And when we look at the word treachery, it's betrayal and deception. So these are people who betray you, deceive you, and that is not good. So these folks who do this will not live out half their days. Half their days are not going to be, they're not going to be here. And David ends the psalm with, I will trust in you. I will trust in you, period. That's the end of it. So Selah and Selah again. And that is the psalm for today, Psalm 55. We just finished up at 8 o'clock. We started at 7 o'clock. And I wanted to share the word of the day is glory. My mom's name is Glory, and I wish her well in the hospital. She was in the hospital, and this word of the day is for her. I know the glory of God through the use of my divine gifts. How glorious life can feel when I put God first. Selassie the first, the power of the Trinity first. That's what Selassie means. It means power of three. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. This is what we learned, right? Translated, I translate that. I don't disrespect it. I just translate it into Father, Blessed Mother, and I. I am part of that Trinity. It's I and I. And being part of that Trinity allows me to know that I am part of a humanity. That when I look at another person, I'm seeing the Most High. Okay? And every step I take, it's going to be returned to me. What I sow is what I'm going to reap. So good things. Selfless things. Do something selfless for someone. Sow goodness, sow mercy, sow truth, sow all the compassion you have, sow that. So immersed in the presence of the divine, I am lifted, uplifted, and everything seems possible. When I live from I and I humanity, I and I easily swayed by the ups and downs of life, human nature. However, when I live from I and I divinity, I navigate both the smooth and rocky terrains of life with equal ease. The glory of God is mine when I am aligned fully with righteousness within. I use I and I divine gifts with confidence and gratitude. I venture into life boldly, feeling fully deserving of the world's abundance and ready to share of myself so others may know the world's abundance as well. The shimmering light of righteousness shines its glory upon I and I. Living as a divine being I and I am, I and I bring the glory of the Most High into the world. This word of the day, glory, is supported by Colossians chapter 1, verse 27. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Christ in you, remember I talked about it's on the inside, and the future is of glory. It's going to be okay. It's going to be great. You're going to be fine. You're going to be well and healthy. I receive that, and I ask of that my words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart are acceptable in the sight of the Most High. Here ends Chant a Psalm a day. We have the Bible verse of the day, and the Bible verse of the day is from Romans chapter 8, verse 28. We have 5 minutes left before the top of the hour of 8:08 a.m. And I have to start walking to class that starts at 9. So I have to walk to my office and collect something. So I need to get going because where my office is located is across campus from where the classrooms are. When there's classrooms in that Henson Center that students can meet at instead of meeting over there. But anyway, that's how it goes. And this is from Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And we know, I know that in all things the Most High works for the good of those who love the Most High, who have been called according to the Most High's purpose. So this is powerful, this verse of the day, because it's speaking of that the Most High, the Almighty God, works for the good of those who love. So when you are about love, that good works for the good is going to be revealed in you. And that is for those that have been called according to the purpose of the Most High's purpose that the Most High has. And a lot of times people don't know what their purpose is because they haven't reached into who the Most High is within them. So that Christ in you is a future of happiness according to Colossians and according to Romans. This is the good. God works for the good of those that love God. And loving God is fearing God. Fearing God is putting yourself not before others, but putting others before you. Okay? Putting others before you. And when you don't do that, you're going to not know your purpose, because God works for the good of those who are about love, who love God, who fear God, who know God, and who have been called according to God's purpose. So not many are called, but few are actually chosen out of that calling. Okay? Few are chosen out of that calling. So when we look at Romans chapter 8, verse 28, Colossians chapter 1, verse 27, Christ in you, the future of, glory. And then we look at Psalm 55, it all comes together beautifully. Okay. Cast I burdens on the Most High. Cast them on the Most High. And I'm going to end this at 1 hour and 13, because today's the 13th of March. 113 was the amount that I gave in to a friend and a companion, I would call person a confidant. So here we are at 113. We're going to end now, and we're going to outro with Chant Day. Mystical powers to you are born. See that never been done. Behind the Chant